Welcome back for another devlog for Onigatana. I'm Cameron here at Repair4 Interactive, and I'm very excited to show you what we've been up to these last 2 weeks. Firstly, we've got wave mode. That brings an exciting new change for stance level ups, but more importantly, we have a new person joining the team, Dan. Dan's a very experienced designer. He's been tasked with designing the wave mode. So, you might be asking, what's the wave mode?
Wave mode. All right, well, there's a few reasons. We'll talk about the reasons in a minute, but let's start off with what it is. It's an infinite wave-based combat arena. Best way to think of it is essentially a cut-down version of Onigatana that's taking inspiration from games like Vampire Survivors and Devil Daggers, where Vampire Survivors is more about lots of bullets and stuff like that. We're instead going to have an emphasis on skills and unlockables. So the main idea of wave mode is infinite arena, stretches in all directions. You can have waves of enemies that will spawn in. After the player defeats a certain amount of these, a altar will spawn. You then fight your way to the altar, you activate the altar, and on the altar you will have a randomized selection of the various stances and abilities. You'll be restricted to only 3 stances in a run, so you'll have to make a good selection of what you want to do. Different runs, you're going to try different things, that kind of stuff. Anytime you unlock a stance, all level 1 abilities will be also unlocked, so you'll get a nice big kit of new goodies to play with, basically. And then each altar that you activate after that, you'll be able to, again, choose a stance or an ability. You'll only be allowed to have 3 per run, though, so eventually stances will be locked out and it'll just be abilities, and you'll upgrade those up to basically level 3. Initially in the game, there'll only be 4 stances available in the pool, but more will unlock as you achieve different goals and things like that. So back to the first question, why? Because we can go around in circles for ages trying to build cool, complex levels and stuff like that. But right now, we feel like we really want to focus on making the combat look really, really good. All right, so it's about really sort of focusing and knuckling down on getting our combat to feel awesome, having a focus on cool enemies, making sure all our weapons and our upgrades and everything all feel really cool. So then we can take all that and then we can roll it out into larger levels and stuff like that. Basically refocusing the project. Secondly, we want to get something out to you as soon as possible as well. So people can play, get used to the combat, play around with some of the stances, all that sort of stuff as well. That's about it at this stage.
So wave mode consists of 2 things, right? To make wave mode work, we firstly need a way to infinitely spawn enemies and rules for that. And then secondly, we need an infinite level. At least that's how we've decided to go about it. Let's have a look. We can see we have an object here called Infinity Wave Spawner. Kind of just built like a generic tool for how to actually go about defining the rules of how the enemies will spawn. Right now we've got 2 wave options. So we've got pure random, which just from the pool of enemies that we have available to us, it will just spawn in a random type of enemy specified by the amount. So we have like a starting wave size here of 3 and then a wave increment of 2, which just means that it will start with 3 enemies, and then every time you kill the wave, or the time it ticks down, it will spawn an additional 2 enemies. So it'll go 3 and 5 and 7, etc. And we have our max duration here, so 15 seconds. This is all obviously just testing numbers. Nothing here is finalized, but we've gone with difficulty waves, which are a little bit more crafted experiences. We have a spawn from distance thing here, which kind of dictates how close an enemy can spawn, and this is our range, between 10 meters and 30 meters away. And then we have our wave pool down here. So if difficulty waves is selected, we can see that we can kind of craft these waves and give them an associated difficulty rating defined at this top here with the slider. If you go all the way down to here, the spawns get not that much harder, but a little bit harder. This is all just, once again, testing purposes. But as we get higher and higher, it's going to become more and more difficult enemies. Right now, we can only spawn in difficulty 1 waves, as dictated by this difficulty range, which is a starting level and then the max level that range can go to. And we also have a waves before difficulty increment, which just means how many waves before that difficulty moves up 1, so 1 to 2, 2 to 3, etc. Which will pick different waves from the wave pool based on that number. Next thing is actually defining the infinite level. The infinite level works as such. You have like a starting chunk, a 100 by 100 square, essentially, that when you move too close to the edges, it will spawn in chunks from a pool of chunks. You can think of it as we have a list of available terrains that we can spawn in, and when we move too close to an edge, it will spawn in a random terrain from that list, and we will populate the level like that. We also have a difficulty level for our terrain chunks as well, so that as the game progresses over time, we can spawn in more and more difficult environments for the player to traverse, / cooler stuff for the player to use in the environment. All right, wave mode. Let's show it off. So this is a prototype of the experience here, where we have enemies like spawn in around us. When you kill them, you can see that we spawn in more enemies to then procedurally killed. These waves, like I said earlier, will get harder and harder, but right now we've only got like a couple waves to choose from just for testing the tech out. Dan also mentioned a little bit of leveling up, which sounds scary, might blow out scope, but we assure you it's not that scary and the tech is already built for it. So how exactly does a stance level up, or an ability in a stance level up? It basically meant that we had to redesign how stances work completely. Stances before were just like one script, like you had the fire stance and it had all the fire stance stuff kind of in it, which wasn't going to lead to a very modular design, as well as it was all designed with one power level in mind, right? So we had one variable for the damage, one variable for the attack range. But if there were multiple levels of our stance, then this starts to get a bit weird. We didn't want to have variables for level 1 versions of our stance and level 2 versions of our stance and level 3 versions of our stance. And as a programmer, I'm like, the designers, they could decide that they want 6 levels. And I was not really prepared to put that many iterations of the same variables. So we went to something called scriptable objects. Scriptable objects are kind of magical. They can be thought of as something that remembers the value of a variable. So what does that mean? It means that we can save the level 1 offensive ability for our fire with one set of variable values, like the damage and the range and the size and the speed. But for level 2, we can set all those variables different. And all we have to do is slot in our scriptable object and it will update those variables. Let me quickly show you what it looks like behind the scenes now. Okay, so here's the fire stance. Our stances are basically a scriptable object with 5 other scriptable objects inside of them. They take in a basic attack, a charge attack, an offensive ability, defensive ability, and they enter stance. So when you enter, we can get all the visual effects to play properly. And it also allows us to potentially add an effect when we enter a stance in the future, but that is not yet been decided. So we just slot in these things. And let's have a look. So we've got basic attack. If I go over here and have a look at our fire basic attack, you can see it has the attack speed in here, and attack cycles, attack animation lists, and like our attack ranges and hitboxes. The charge has more variables, etc. And then we also have the fire offensive, and they all get slotted into our fire stance scriptable object. Now, how does leveling up work? Essentially, all we have to do is then slot in level 2 abilities here, which have better and more updated effects. We can also fine-tune them to have slightly different effects if we want. So if we want the level 3 version of our fire offensive ability to implode and pull everything towards the center, it can do that. So it just lets some flexibility and it makes sure our scripts stay small and usable and modular. So it's all good. Let's show you what it looks like in game. Right now, it's super prototype. Just bear that in mind. So right now, we've got this programmer art, the altar. You jump on top of it, boom, you get a menu of the available things to upgrade. So we got the fire offensive ability. Let's take this. So we've upgraded it. Don't mind that it didn't pause. And we're going to fire out this ability, and you can see how huge it is. This is just the leveled up version of that ability. Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. And that's kind of the point, to visually show that the level up is in fact working. To prove my point, let me show you the level 1 ability. Let's go ahead, I'll fire my projectile over here. You can see it's kind of tiny. Bam. Are you ready for Bugs of the Fortnite? In making infinite enemy spawner, we got a little funny. Let's have a look. Infinite spawns. Leave a like if you think this should make it into the final game. Thanks. We've also been updating our grappling hook at the moment. So we've run into this little funny bug where we got infinite pull. You can see we also have an animation there for it. We're still working out exactly what the grapple hook's going to get pulled out of, but we got movement. Woohoo! Thanks for sticking to the end of the video. We really appreciate it, and we hope that you're enjoying it. We really hope that you're enjoying the updates and that you love seeing the project progress. We love hearing your feedback, so thank you for everyone who has been commenting, giving us encouraging words and helpful advice. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, do all that stuff. All right, and come visit us on Discord. We want to see you and we want to talk. So there's a link in the description. Go click it. From the Repair 4 Interactive team. We will see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Music. Don't put that in, Mark, please. Bye 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 blah blah blah.